Thank you so much, Russell. Coming up, you know you can find all the sex offenders on that registry that everybody has access to, but have you heard the very latest in the law? They're now putting kids as young as age 14 on that registry. They say it will let people know about the teenagers who act out sexually and might be violent or dangerous, but critics say this will label these kids and keep them from getting the treatment they believe works if you get them young enough. Your opinions about this? Give us a call. We'll talk about it next on Your Turn.
You're watching Your Turn. If it matters to you, it's important to us.
Florida's sex offender registry is about to get even longer. You know, that website that gives you information about the sex offenders who live in your neighborhood will soon include teenagers as young as 14 who act out sexually. For some teens, they do become sex offenders at an early age, and because their records are sealed, they could go on to molest or hurt others as adults. This is designed to stop that, but this new law has plenty of critics. People who work with juvenile sex offenders say this labels these kids in a way that ruins any chance of getting them treatment at an early age when it might be most effective. Do you think kids as young as 14 belong on the adult sex offender registry? That is our topic today. Chip Royal joins us, a therapist who works with juvenile sex offenders with Apple Services for the Hillsborough County Crisis Center, also with PMG Psychological Management Group. Dennis DeFlaming, a well-known criminal defense attorney in the Bay Area, and Barbara McCormick, mental health counselor and director of Apple Services for the Hillsborough County Crisis Center. Welcome all. You don't think of sex offenders as being 14 years old. Barbara, they're as young as 14. A lot of people don't know that.
Absolutely. At Apple Trauma Response Center, we do the juvenile work, and we have kids as young as 8, 9, sometimes a little younger that we will do treatment with. The majority of our kids are in the teen years, you know, and again, one of the things I think the public doesn't know is the majority of our victims do know their perpetrators, their offenders, and that's the case with our juveniles also.
What are you seeing? 8, 9, 10, 12, 14? Are they sex offenders, or are they just actually acting out sexually?
You know,
what does that mean?
These are children who are acting out sexually, you know, and they act out for a number of reasons. It doesn't necessarily have to be because they were sexually abused themselves. You know, one of the things that I think that we recognize is oftentimes they're in situations, family situations, where there are other kinds of traumas or difficulties or dysfunction going on. It may be domestic violence, it may be, you know, physical abuse, it may be drug and substance abuses. You know, and this is one more way that kids act out.
Dennis DeFlaming, it's one thing for kids to play doctor, or they molest their sister or whatever, they're experimenting, they're acting out sexually for whatever reason. There is another classification of kids, is there not, that can be violent and just bad, act badly.
And that's absolutely right. I think there are, whether they be 14 or 15 or 16, if they're a vicious, violent, sexual predator, what this law says is that we need to keep an eye on them. And if they do fall within that category, the public should have an opportunity to know who they are. What you have to build into this law, however, is if they do rehabilitate themselves and they get out and they get into adulthood, they get away from that type of activity, there should be an opportunity for them to be able to get off that registry and live their own life the way they can.
And there's no provision for that right now.
Well, actually there is. There is a provision, but we're talking about 10 years. On a Tier 3, it's a quarter of a century before you can get off, so it can be a very long period of time.
Chip Royal, weigh in on this. What's going to be the impact of a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid on the adult registry?
Well, I don't know exactly what the impact will be, but one thing I was talking about earlier was it would be, well, the impact to the family itself, the impact to the kid too. One thing that's going to happen with the registry is, like Barbara was just noting a minute ago, majority of these kids, their victims are actually within their own family. It's usually a brother or sister who is younger and under 12, and that would automatically, whether it's force or coercion, or one of these more violent type of kids, which is a rare person. But what was more done in a jest or in play, they get wrapped up into one of these charges, they're going to be registered for life. But meanwhile, the other concern I have is that the actual victim themselves will be registered too. Not actually on the registry, but their brother's picture is going to be placed on the registry with their home address, with their brother's school, and that's going to impact probably the victim and the family itself as a whole. So I'm pretty concerned about that also.
14 or 15 years old and you're on the registry and people look you up and you're going to school with them, the emotional impact of trying to get better if your picture's on that registry, Barbara?
It's very traumatizing. you know,